Hey, this is Joe. Today I'm going to be working again on my 1979 Honda CBX. I'm going to start stripping down the bike. I need to get all of the electronics off. I need to get things like the brake, the rear sets, all that stuff off so I can take a look at the frame. I need to do a bunch of cleaning up, like the turn signals and the rear light, because I don't like the style that it came with. And then I'm going to pull the engine out of the bike so that I can work on it. I need to take the valve cover off. That needs to be replaced. I need to go through the valves. I need to check clearances and repair a couple things on it. And then I also need to paint the frame and paint the engine. So this is just the start of all of that work. So hopefully you find this interesting or helpful. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Enjoy. I've got a little more room in my garage now because I sold one of the motorcycles. So here's the current state of the CBX. So I've been getting a bunch of parts delivered. I haven't started putting them on yet because I still need to clean up a lot of what's going on in here. So all the wiring I'm going to be removing. So the 79s had a different wiring harness than the 81s and 82s. I actually like the 81 and 82 wiring harness better because they go from the single unit, these spark units are all in one, to 3 individual, which is what was typical on the 750s and the 900s, the dual overhead cams. Has a couple extra wires and things that I'll be able to use if I need. And this is all just custom wiring. None of this is OEM wires. So I'd rather just get rid of it, start with something fresh so that I have all the original features of the bike. And that's ultimately what I want. I want all of the OEM features and I'm going to add some others as well. So I might as well get this all out of here so I can continue checking the state of the bike. I can get it cleaned up. I can go through the frame. I can clean up any of the bolt holes that were added. I think I can clean up some of the metal here so that this looks a little bit nicer. So we've got a ground that was screwed into the frame right here that we'll remove. So there is a switch wired to this red and yellow wire, and then a red wire is on the other side of that switch. I'm going to unscrew the spark units. It looks like these are all 8mm at least. That's good. They stuck with metric on the bike. Some of these wires are taped up here. So I'll get them removed. And then it looks like these turn signals that have been screwed in here are connected. So we'll see if these have been hardwired. The factory turn signals usually use bullet connectors, but I have a feeling these have just been either soldered or twist tied. I'm just curious. Yeah, it does look like there is shrink wrap around that. That's at least a pretty good connection. But let's see if it was actually soldered. So with the shrink wrap off, it does look like it was soldered. So what I'll do is I'll just clip this. If I want to reuse these, right, I can always just strip the wire. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Does look like these turn signal wires are run around here. So I'll just clip them. Let's see if that frees up the rest of the harness. I don't think this is a terrible location for this wiring, but I think what happened is there may have been a lot of heat and it looks like a lot of this has melted. It looks like a lot of So you can see the bottom of these coils do melt, which doesn't mean they're bad, but you can see it just melted all over this area, got on the wiring, so it makes sense just, while we're going through the bike, all of these coils will get better quality, and then we won't have to worry about this. I mean, they probably moved away from this single unit to the 3 because of some of the issues like this. And just to show, so here is the new, well, it's not new, but here's the used harness that I'm gonna be using for this bike. So this is the 82 harness, and this came with these individual units. So these you can replace much easier than you can one of these. I have had one of these go bad on me, and it's easy to replace the one. If one of these go bad on you, you have to replace the entire bank, it looks like. But what was nice is I bought this harness and it had a lot of the pieces that I didn't have. So it does come with, right, these 3 spark units. It does come with a rear, it's not a sensor, but this is what you hook up to the rear brake, and this is what triggers the tail light. It does have another starter solenoid. I'll be replacing this because it's probably the OEM flasher relay. I need to replace that with one that supports LEDs. So all in all, it looks like the harness is in pretty good shape for what I need. So we had a couple more of these wires that were plugged in here. And then we have wiring that goes all the way. So we do have some wiring that goes to the turn signals and the tail light. But it looks like there's no easy way to disconnect that. So again, I'm gonna have to cut this and then I can remove it from here. So I'm gonna remove this rear fender. So you can tell this is all custom with a couple screws that went in to hold the tail light. And then you can see the turn signals are mounted directly into the frame, which is not a great spot for them. So I'm gonna remove all of these nuts, see if I can get access to the wires, make it easy to clip, and then I'll be able to remove the harness. So it looks like these are all sheet metal screws that have been used. So it looks like these are bigger than 8mm. Okay, rear fender is off. Now we have a better look at all the cabling. And again, it looks like all of this has been soldered together. So I'm just going to clip each of these so I can remove them. Okay, so fenders removed, and then I'll clip right turn signal, and I'll clip the left turn signal. And again, all of this is custom work. None of this is how it comes from the factory. So now I should be able to remove the rest of the harness. We have this aftermarket ignition. It's going to come out. I still haven't decided yet what I'm going to do for the ignition. I believe I have a key for this one at least. Okay, this wire is connected to the starter motor. I'll put that nut back on so we don't lose it. All right, harness is free. So there were little spacers that were used on this, and then I have a button and a toggle switch that were mounted into this as well. I'll remove this plate. I'll keep it in case I do decide to use it later, but I want as much room as I can get in here as I'm trying to run the harness. Okay, pull that out. And then this toggle switch. this one in. We should force this out. Put this little ring on top. So you can see it was just a little toggle switch. Okay, these are all 8mm. Now that all those screws are out, we can remove this pipe. Next, let's get the ignition coils out. And these coils may be in good shape. May just need a quick little clean. Not a huge fan of these red wires. These are pretty cheap to buy. You can buy some really nice ones, you can buy some really cheap ones, but I'll work to get these out. And then I'll inspect the wiring down here to see if all of this is still the stock wiring. So these should all be the stock screws. So this is an 8mm. This is a 10mm. So it does look like the clutch cable goes through this. So I need to remove that. This clutch cable is loose anyway, so we will remove it. So it looks like the oil lines are run through here as well. So that's good. So this is still the stock mounts that holds the oil lines. So I'll remove these with screws, see if I can separate them, and then I should be able to pull them out if there's nothing else holding them in. Oh, it does look like I can bend these down a little bit. So we'll do that to get these oil lines out. So there we go. Ignition coils are out, so we'll clean them up. We'll probably do some testing with them to make sure they're functioning properly. So we'll unscrew these turn signals, get them out of the way while we're in here. So out of the wiring we do have left. So this is stator here. This cable looks like it's oil pressure switch, and this may be neutral as well. Going down here, we've got ground for the frame, and then here is the points on the other side. All right, so bike's definitely been cleaned up. A little bit easier to assess. So the front suspension on this bike is going to be swapped out. I'm going to be upgrading the stock forks over to Suzuki forks. So it'll have a new set of clip-ons. It'll have a custom upper and lower, I guess, fork bridge, triple tree mounts. And then I'll be able to keep the wheel, but I have upgraded brakes. I've got Brembo brakes that match the Suzuki suspension that I'm gonna put on. And then I will be keeping the stock brake. I bought one that's in a little bit better shape, but I do need to go through and clean that whole system. I guess while I'm at it, I need to remove these. So you can see those were screwed right into the frame. I'll do the same with this one. So next, let's get the brake pedal and the rear set off. I'm not going to be keeping these. I bought the actual OEM. foot pegs, and then I'm pretty sure this is jammed. So I need to go through and I need to clean this. So this is an interesting design. I kind of like this. The problem is it sits right here in this triangle, and usually when you do the cafe racer, you try and keep this as clean as possible. There are some other options for this. There's real thin master cylinders that you can run right behind here, but you can see this issue where the line is actually higher than the cylinder is. This is a good place for air to get in, and then you have an air bubble in your system and it makes it really difficult to bleed. It does look like that maybe this could be reversed so it sits a little bit higher, but I'll probably get rid of this. This will get me closer to actually removing the swing arm as well. It'll be good to get in there, grease everything, make sure that it's moving smoothly, and then it'll give me a chance to actually examine the rear wheel, go through, clean it, and see the shape that it's in. See, it'll be nice to go through and clean up some of these bolts as well. You can see there's a little bit of rust. I'm sure that'll be easy to clean to get this back to looking good. So it doesn't look like this is moving. So I'm curious if any part of this is rusted. Yeah, it really shouldn't be this difficult to remove. It could be that they potentially painted this. And maybe it's this that's rusted instead of the actual brake system behind, but we'll see. So yeah, this is definitely a lot more difficult than it's supposed to be. Does look like it's rusted in there, so I'm gonna try and get some penetrating oil in there. See if I can at least get this moving a little bit better. All I'm trying to do is wedge the screwdriver in between this brake pedal. Yep, we get a little more movement. That's good. Again, trying not to mar up any of these surfaces. All right, so that came off. Little bit of work, definitely some work. Yeah, it does look like potentially paint or something got in here. This is not supposed to be any other color than silver. Doesn't look like it's damaged or anything, so it's perfect. We can always repowder coat this if we want. All right, so next we'll remove this bolt from the rear set. So it looks like this is an 8mm. So I'm going to disconnect the rear caliper first. That way I can start getting all of the brake lines off. Okay, both of these are 6mm. Okay, that is free. And then I can bend up a bunch of these clips that are holding the brake line in. Okay, so that brake line's free. And then I will just remove this bolt. This is a 12mm. It does look like there's brake fluid leaking from there, probably because there is no clamp. Definitely brake fluid leaking from there. Make sure you get brake fluid off all those painted surfaces because it will eat through the paint. Okay, so it looks like this is free. And then down here, I just need needle nose pliers. This is the attachment right here. You need needle nose pliers to straighten that cotter pin. Okay, cotter pin's out. That frees this. I'll use a new cotter pin. for it. And then we should be able to lift this up and away as long as we can get it out and around the shock. And there we go, brakes off. So this looks like it's not moving, and it should, because this whole assembly should be rotating. So it's best to use a piece of wood so you're not destroying any of these threads. There's also a little spring on this, so I'm going to remove that. Okay, spring's off. Sometimes you just need a bigger hammer. All right, this worked. So you could see this was pretty rusted in here, so that's the reason that it had seized to the inside of this. Now, in order to get this out, I'm either gonna have to be able to knock from that side because it is supporting the engine temporarily, or I can set the bike up and then try and get it out. I may just try to hit from that side. So I'm going to knock this back in from the other side. So you can see this is where it was jammed from. You can see there's a lot of rust inside of there. So we'll have to clean out this inside, probably lubricate it a little bit, and then I think we will be good. But that definitely explains why the brake was frozen. So maybe the brake assembly is okay. It may have just been this part. You can even see that there was some water, unfortunately, coming out of what looks like part of the frame. We'll get out whatever is left in there once we get everything off this frame. So the bike is all cleaned up with wiring and all taken off. So next thing I'm gonna do is remove the engine from the frame. So I've got the engine supported from the bottom. I need to remove the drive chain. I'm actually just going to cut it since I do have a replacement. I'm going to use an angle grinder to get that off, just because it'll be a little easier right now. And then I have to do a couple things like disconnect the shifter pedal. I also need to remove the oil cooler from the frame so that I can get that out with the engine. And now I can remove the chain. So next, let's disconnect the shift lever. Okay, that's off. Next, we'll remove the oil cooler hoses. I also need to get a paper towel and plug these. There's no oil in the engine right now, so hopefully most of this drained, but I'm sure there's still some residual oil there. Okay, that's off. Put this in there. I'll drape it over the top of the engine. I'll do the same thing on the other side. same thing. Next, we need to start removing the engine mounts. So the engine is held to the frame in a couple places. There's one down here. There's one up top here. There's this mount and then this mount. So I think once we remove those, and obviously on the other side as well, then I'm pretty sure the engine will be free. There shouldn't be anything else. So in order to get this one out, we do have to remove the spark plug. Hopefully nothing falls in there. And then we'll see if this is an 8mm. Yep, it is. We'll do the same thing on this side, remove the spark plug. Okay, and I'll put the spark plug back in temporarily just to protect the cylinder, because I know there's some gunk in here that I need to remove. Next, we'll remove this left bolt, and then the bolt on the right. And actually, I'll keep this one in here right now while I remove the other two at the back of the engine. So it's this one and this one are the last two remaining that are holding this in. So I'll see if one of these is looser than the other. Okay, that one's out. Just need to make sure we keep the engine spacer with it. And then this is the last thing holding this engine in. And before I do this, I need to make sure that the bike is supported so I can drop the engine down and the bike won't fall over. And so the bike doesn't roll, I'll put this behind the rear wheel. So this one we want to stay in. This is the other one holding the engine in. So we do need to make sure the engine stays balanced as we are removing it. So engine shifted forward a little bit. This left bolt out. So I'm holding up the front of the engine. Remove this other mount. Okay, engine should be free at this point. So let's drop it down and make sure. So there is a little 10mm over here that needed to be removed as well. Now with that, the engine is free. The CBX engine is out. I do have an engine hoist. I may pick it up and see if it fits inside of the engine stand that I have. I have a custom bracket that does allow you to fit the back of the dual overhead cam engines. I'm not sure if the spacing is the same. We'll have to see. And then I have the frame over here. Gives me a little bit easier access to work on different parts of it. Next step is to get the engine on the engine stand. So what I made a couple years ago was a mount. So this is a car engine stand. So I made a couple mounts using angle iron so that this was all flexible and it would fit the mounts in the dual overhead cam. So it looks like everything fits in well. Hopefully the angle iron is strong enough to lift the engine. I do have it secured in 4 places. And then I'm going to use my engine hoist to help lift it up so that I can get it into the engine stand. This will make it a lot easier to work with. and it's also a good way to paint the engine because you can get it up off the ground. So now I need to secure the engine. I have some straps that are good for, I think each one of the straps is good for up to 2,000 pounds. So I'm going to use those, wrap it around the engine, see if I can get it up, and then see if I can get it married with the engine stand. I also have an engine leveler. This helps balance the engine once you do have it tied down. So if it is leaning over to one side, you can turn this crank and you can get it so it is level. So I took a bunch of these tie downs and I just strapped them together. And I'm gonna see if I can get it to reach down over this engine. There's nothing in the way of this strap, because when the strap tightens down, I don't want it up against anything. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a tie all the way around. Let's see if that's more balanced. So the engine's up on the stand. I'm gonna have to make a couple adjustments just to make sure that it's sitting well. But that engine was a little heavier than what I've dealt with before. It was a little more unbalanced, but luckily got it up. So now I got the engine in the engine stand. I tightened up a bunch of these bolts. I can release tension on the engine hoist and just make sure that it's sturdy. So all the weight is on the engine stand now. So just for safety, I'll leave it connected to the hoist, and then I'll let this sit overnight just to make sure that it can handle all of the weight. All right, so that's it for the teardown. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, more coming. See ya.